Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the session, Protection from Marine Environment, I enjoyed the prepared presentation from 3 speakers. Thank you to speakers. Everyone is well aware of the importance of protection the marine environment, and the international organization and the countries are making great efforts. Today's presentation also introduced what was done to protect the marine environment by reducing the transportation of aquatic species through ships. The order of expert discussion session was informed by email. This discussion session time is until 11:30. Now, let's start the discussion with the panels. First of all, I would like to introduce myself, the chair of this session. I'm Kyung-sun of KIOST. KIOST is the Korea Institute of Ocean Science and Technology, a government-funded research institute that conducts research in various fields from basic to applied science. I'm the director of Ballast Water Research Center in the KIOST. My research background is marine plankton physiology and ecology. I have been conducting research on reducing the transportation of aquatic species through ships for a long period. I received a PhD in oceanography from Ina University in Korea. I'm in charge of the test facility and testing QA/QC prototype approval of a ballast water management system on behalf of the government. Thank you. Next step is to introduce the participants to discussion. First of all, please introduce each of the presenters. The order is same as the presentation order. First, Dr. Guillaume, please.
Thank you very much, Professor, and good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Drillet. I am from SGS Global Marine Service team, and I'm the manager basically for the Asian region. So it's a large region. In my case, it goes all the way from Korea to Pakistan and all the way down to New Zealand. So it's a very large area, and we are servicing the marine and maritime industry. So the environmental side, the sea, as well as the ships. I have been in that position now for a couple of years, and prior to that, I have been involved in type approval testing for many, many years. I have the chance to be the chair of the Global Testnet, so the organization I mentioned about in my presentation. It's a global organization representing testing facilities all over the world. And I'm very pleased to be here with you today, and I'm looking forward to very interesting questions. Thank you very much.
Professor Chair, please.
Bonjour, bonsoir. I don't know what time in your location, but actually I learned French when I was in high school, so I can speak a few words. I'm associate professor at Department of Ocean Environmental Science here in Chungnam University in Daejeon. If you have ever visited Korea, you probably know Daejeon is the middle part of where there is no ocean actually around surrounding us, our city. I've been studying biological oceanography for more than two decades, and when I was in graduate school, and both in US and in Korea. I've been involved in ballast water study for many years, studying from US when I involved in a small project. So I think glad to join this conversation. Thank you so much.
Next, Mr. Ofstedal, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm happy to be with all of you in the panel and the audience. I'm a specialist director in the Ministry of Climate and Environment in Norway. My area of responsibility is all environmental requirements applying to shipping, meaning air pollution and greenhouse gas emission, meaning other types of emissions, and of course also ballast water management and biofouling. At present, I'm also coordinating the revision of the biofouling management guidelines at the IMO. So I'm working in the ministry in charge of environmental requirements for a ship. I've been doing this for quite many years, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Next is panel introduce Dr. Kang, please.
Hi, good morning. This is Song-Gil Kang, working at the Korea Research Institute of Ships and Ocean Engineering, in short, in KRISO. Actually, as you know, KRISO is touching some R&D topic related to the ships and ocean engineering as a semi-governmental research institute. I'm serve as the director of research strategy department, which are the cover that some identification of new R&D framework, especially with considering the international or some industrial or some academic framework to be required in studying from the National Institute. Personally, I had measured marine benthic ecology. I guess we are so strange to hear why the benthic ecologist working in this ships research institute, but we wanted to couple with some bit among some other academic background, especially I wanted to couple some marine environmental issue with the environmental engineering issue. So since I joined at this KRISO in 2000, I had ever covered, introduced new R&D framework on carbon capture and storage, especially in offshore sediment and oil spill response issue. And now I'm working on that biofouling issue. So also I'm a regional director of the NOPAP, the Marine MERAC is UNEP's regional sea program. It's covering the oil spill cooperation issue in Far Eastern ASEAN Sea countries. Anyway, nice to meet you here, and I wanted to be a good opportunity for know the global trend on how we are work on this biofouling issue at the global level. Thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, Dr. Son, please.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to shortly introduce myself. I am Dr. Sean, who is working at the Marine Equipment team of Korean Register, which is one of classification society in Republic of Korea, as principal surveyor and marine biologist. I'm very interested in studying and working on management of ships ballast water and ships biofouling. As you know, the management of biofouling and ballast water have the same purpose, which is preventing invasive species via ships. In this area, I'm an advisor to our government. Yeah, nice to meet you and everyone via this conference. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, the speakers will briefly summarize what they presented today. 30 minutes for each speaker. Please start with Dr. Guillaume in order of presentation today. Please.
Thank you, Prof. Shin. And so when you follow my presentation, you'll see I focus on the commissioning part because this is the topic here. I want to take a step back here and look at the convention. It's a fantastic risk management tool in many respects. For almost a decade, I have heard a lot of I would say, complain about the system not working and so on. And we have a type approval process which is actually very stringent and which is working very well. And we see that today in the commissioning testing with a very low failure rate somehow once everything is prepared properly. So we know the treatment system themselves, the technology itself can work and can serve as a function to treat the water down to the D2 standard. So it can be used to protect the environment. The challenge that we have ahead of us is really to see how we can integrate those approved systems into a ballast water management plan, into a process for the ship, in order to make sure that the vessels can actually manage the ballast water in a consistent manner. There are still a few unknown. There are still a few things that we have to learn. It's normal. It's new technology. It's installed on a vessel that is trading globally. I think the biggest challenge that we will face right now will be the interface, usage interface for the port state control during the inspection, but for the crew primarily, in order to use on the day-to-day basis the system, it has to be somehow similar and consistent from one system to another system. As you heard during my presentation, we still have challenges with the TRO discharge, which is not regulated within the convention. I think we are switching now from the development of technology and integration on board a vessel to real ballast water management. So now we are becoming really much ship-centric, and this is where the focus should go in the near future, trying to find out what can work and what cannot work on board a vessel. So that's basically, I think, the basis here for the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to Professor Chair.
Hey, well, I think it's resonating. I don't know why. What I want in my presentation was, from an ecological perspective, just looking at the holistically, the entire process of invasion. I understand when I was asked about this presentation, I tried to look, what is environment, eco-friendly management of biofouling, basically. And I quickly realized it's all about industry, because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Anti-fouling coatings, is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And I understand the concept of industry, basically the fuel consumption, kind of efficiency of cruising speed, but I wanted to show you that the entire process by invasion. So where we are lacking in our knowledge, where we need to look at, for effectively managing this biofouling issue. I understand the IMO is shifting from ballast water to fouling issue, and if you look at the whole surface area, that I just calculated is huge, and it's not regulated. It's not. I don't know. Only a few countries just regulate. So the influx through the whole ship surface would be immense, and what we should look at. And also if you look at the entire process. We are lacking knowledge of how they actually are being released and survive in the recipient port and harbors, and what are the contributing and factors for such a successful invasion. And we haven't looked at. We just started, so I want to the audience pay attention to that aspect.
Thank you. Lastly, Mr. Optedal, let's start.
Thank you very much. As I presented to you in my presentation, introduction of alien species caused by ships is one of the main global environmental problems. We have now the mandatory requirement in the Ballast Water Management Convention, and dealing with that problem through that convention is now well underway with the introduction of ballast water management treatment system in all ships. That is well underway. However, when it comes to the biofouling as a vector for spreading invasive species, we don't have the same framework. Now, the present work is to improve these guidelines, and we are doing so at the moment, make them more clear and provide more specific recommendations on what to do in order to reduce the spreading of invasive species through biofouling. Therefore, we need to provide that the inspection of ships is properly undertaken through the appropriate inspection intervals, and that we need to ensure that the cleaning procedure are properly undertaken, with also requirements for collection of fouled materials, so we can deal with the problem of spreading invasive species through biofouling in the same way as we have done with the ballast water management at the IMO. When we developed the Ballast Water Management Convention, IMO also supported developing countries in ballast water management procedures, and also now the IMO is supporting developing countries to introduce biofouler management. So IMO is also now underway on dealing with biofouling in a much more better way than we have done up until now. And I look forward very much to discuss this issue with all of you in the panel.
Thank you. Thank you all for being on time. Next is Q&A time with the online audience, but unfortunately, we do not allow online audience participation. So we will skip this step. I'm sorry. And then next is Q&A time with the panels. Please ask a question after specifying the person to answer. Let's start with Dr. Kang. Please. Dr. Kang?
Yep. Hi. I have a few questions, especially on the topic related to the biofouling. Especially Professor Choi introduced some severity of some such kinds of marine invasive species, especially introduced by the shipping expertise via biofouling. Actually, it's very important to start what's the severity of such kinds of MIS, or I'm not sure what we should call it. In short, some people's NIS, some people's MIS, some people's I'm not sure. Norway here called another names. So, but basically, it's necessary to especially port authority should carry out some monitoring program. What kinds of invasive species are being introduced into their environment, especially via some route like shipping, especially a process under the process of coating or some ballast waters. But you mentioned that Korea has no systematic monitoring program to assess, especially the list of such kinds of invasive species and assess the risk of such kinds of new introduced species in Korean waters. So, but basically, you mentioned that luckily your team and some Korean researchers had ever studied the list of such kinds of MIS in the Korean waters. So will you, but in the future, in the near future, the Korean government have to carry out such kinds of some systematic environmental or monitoring program to assess such kinds of risk of invasive species introduced by the shipping expertise in Korea. So my question is that if Korea will carry out such kinds of monitoring program, what kinds of program methodology are being recommended, especially under the legal framework, or some, it means that government have to carry out and some with some legal bounding framework. So will you have some suggest or recommend how to carry out such kinds of national-based monitoring program, especially should be carried out by the port authorities?
Well, I think you asked me a very difficult question. Well, I mean, I was lucky enough to be funded by, Ministry of Education for such a study back in, when was it, 2010, The problem with the invasive species was, if we, or more broadly, non-indigenous species, marine non-indigenous species, and of which the subset is marine invasive species that may have, that have demonstrate some ecological or other environmental and economical damage impact to the society. The problem with the invasive species, marine invasive species in Korea is there is no actually legal binding for monitoring. We have some law for harmful organisms, which broadly covers not just invasive species, but also endemic species. Just anything, any marine species that are harmful should be monitored and treated accordingly for its. But there is no specific binding, legal binding for the non-indigenous species. So that's why it has been, studied, by researchers piecewise, basically. If they have money, their funding, they just go out for their own purpose. So the research could be biased, very much toward that research purpose, right? And whenever there's an opportunity, then an issue, then the government, some kind of study has been funded. So I think most of the studies has been biased, in my view. So we need to kind of, need to establish some nationwide policy. I don't know who will be the leading, port authority, or but we can info from many other countries. Effort, California, U.S., right, and also other European countries. There's very good monitoring programs, and the structures of the monitoring and regulation, and how apply the rest of stuff. So we can learn from other countries a lot. But anyway, I think it's the first point, it should be kind of nationwide policy or some regulatory mandate. Otherwise, no researcher will actually voluntarily monitor without that opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for your kind explanation. May I make another question to Dr. Opdel? Yep, Dr. Opdel, I heard that international approach, how to manage this biofouling issue, especially at IMO level. You mentioned that IMO now revising the IMO biofouling guideline, especially to facilitate its implementation at the global or national level, especially by the checking some obstacle or some factors should be modified in the future. So I'm not sure, but of course you had ever mentioned that the list of shortly, what's the most challenging issue or somewhat of obstacle to implement the existing biofouling guideline, especially at the national level. So That's please add more detailed explanations of what are most severe the obstacles or some challenges in for better management of biopowering issue. Another question, actually, anyway, I know that several countries like Norway, not Norway, I'm not sure, but for example, New Zealand or USA or Australia has already had implemented a national strong regulation, especially to responding this biopowering the issue. But I guess most of the country, I'm not sure, but including the Korea, are now preparing the national policy or some framework how to regulate, manage this issue. So I'm not sure. So of course, personally, we IMO or some globally, we need to develop some more general standardized framework to how to manage this issue at the national level. But I'm not sure, but you may deliver some lessons from the existing national level strategy or policy to responding this biopowering, especially to another country which are developing their national policy or strategies, some framework to manage this biopowering issue. My question is that 2 points about that is biopowering.
Thank you very much for this very important question. What we can actually see is that most countries have too little attention on this problem. Only a few countries globally have requirements when it comes to biofouling. The European Maritime Safety in its latest environmental report identified that 50% of the introduced marine species in Europe are coming from ships, meaning that we need to have much better uptake of the IMO guidelines on biofouling management. Also, Norway have been too slow in taking actions. We in the ministry have now tasked the environmental agency to have a better scientific assessment of what is the introduction of marine species in Norway. And we have tasked our maritime agency to establish requirements to apply the biofouling guidelines in our water. So we hope in 2022 that we have a much better framework in Norway also when it comes to biofouling requirements, and I hope that also will be happening in other countries in Europe. I do hope so. Of course, there are biofouling management undertaken on ships in our waters. I know that there are companies which is very active in cleaning hulls and doing it the proper way. When it comes to the main challenges when the requirements or the recommendations in the guidelines, especially in the new revised guidelines which we are developing at the moment, I would say that we have two main challenges. One is for the ships to undertake the needed frequency in their inspections, so we can have the proper risk assessment in order to prevent that the fouling of ships is being undertaken and then causing the spread of the organisms. So that is one challenge. The other challenge is to ensure that we have the proper cleaning system with the proper performance, with the proper removal of the foul material without further spreading. So that is the other main challenge I will identify that we need to have in place in the revised guidelines, and of course that we can have the increased uptake of the guidelines.
Yeah, thank you for your kind explanation. Yeah, I would like to give another 2 chances to the. I will visit again at the later stage for another question to other people, other panelists. Yeah.
Next panel is Dr. Son.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, finally, it's my turn, right? Yeah, thank you Chair. And I have some questions to presenters. First of all, to Dr. Guillaume. Can you hear me, Dr. Guillaume?
Yes, I'm all yours.
Yeah. Thank you for your nice presentation and sharing your experience regarding commissioning test on BWMS. You have undertaken a lot of commissioning tests on BWMS, the 560 tests. Even commissioning test is not a mandatory requirement. You are a rich guy, data rich guy, I think. Yeah, we can expect that the board commissioning testing will be conducted from the June 1st of next year due to amendment of relevant regulation of the BWM Convention, right? And also at MEPC 77 session, Canada also shared their experiences and scientific results regarding performance of the BWMS, as well as the sampling and analysis for post-state control. According to their information and your presentation, the 50% of BWMS did not meet the DITO standard, especially at over than 50 micrometer size class organisms. And they also made a similar point with you to be considered during review stage of the BWM Convention regarding challenges for sampling and analysis for the post-state control. And at some point, the regular basis performance, the monitoring of BWMS will be needed. So here I have two questions for you, Dr. Guillaume. I'm wondering, the first is, I'm wondering your perspective regarding what the challenge will be for commissioning test and what the challenge will be for implementation of the BWM Convention, especially the which regulation and guidelines should be taken, look at during review stage of experience building phase. Second question, according to your presentation, the proportion of failed DITO tests are reducing. I think it's good for implementation of the BWM Convention. It looks like the manufacturer, ship owners, and operators are getting more familiar with the installation and operation of BWMS. However, there is a thing that I cannot understand. The tests failing to meet the TRO, that means the BWMS can discharge the ballast water containing over than 0.1 ppm of TRO, which is recommended by GEJAMP, the BWWG, as maximum allowable discharge concentration, MADC. As I know, the BWMS made in Korea has a systemic alarm and shutdown when the TRO level in discharging ballast water is over MADC. How is it possible to discharge ballast water with exceedance of MADC? Yeah, that's two questions, my question.
Okay, thank you very much for your question. It's very pertinent. I wish to tell you I'm rich, but I'm still driving a bicycle because in order to build capabilities in 20-some countries, it requires a lot of training, investment, and so on. So we invest in our people because we do see that there is, let's say, a need long-term, and this is why we started training people already very early, 2013, so long before actually testing was required. I think in terms of where the convention still has some, I would say, area of work. I would not say improvement because technically some of the regulation are there. Some may be needed to be clarified. On that aspect, for example, to rebound on the discussion with Dr. Choi a little bit earlier on what is required in monitoring invasive species in the environment. In the ballast water, there is already the mandatory obligation for government to look at the water quality in the ports. That's regulation C2. But regulation C2 is very, I would say, high level. It doesn't tell you what is a challenging water in terms of turbidity, what is the amount of organism that we should consider as a risk level and so on. But the regulation does exist. How this is going to be implemented is not yet there. In terms of the ballast water convention implementation, I believe there are two areas really where we can make improvement. The first one is really the interface of the ballast water management system. And this is a software issue. So the system have been type approved. They are working very well, but each of the system have different interfaces. So some system will, for example, shut down if the TRO is too low or too high or so. Some system will just note that the water is not compliant. Some system will automatically bypass without information of anything. And then the crew doesn't know what they have to do because it's not clear whether the water has been fully treated or not fully treated, whether it's compliant or not compliant. And I think there is a need here. And I believe Korea has submitted a fantastic paper to the MEPC 77 coming now to mention it's time that we start looking into that, because the nomenclature somehow of the reports which needs to be available for the crew for being able to use system from one ship to another ship with the same type of information for the port state control should be exactly the same. So I believe there is a strong work here for IMO, and I'm very happy to see that Korea have submitted this paper, because this is a very nice initiative. When it comes to the discussion about the TRO, we have observed a very interesting situation where during type approval, the TRO meter is basically sitting on a container together with the filters and the electrochlorination unit. And so we are talking about a few meters from the discharge line from the test facility. Once you install that on a ship, the TRO meter may be sitting 30 meters away. And if the flow in that small pipe going from the discharge line to the TRO meter is very slow, it can take minutes and minutes and minutes in order to have a TRO stabilizing because of the feedback loop through the PLC and so on. We have observed that already a long time ago through the vessel general permit, because the TRO is regulated under the US regulation. So the TRO has no official limit in the convention. It is used by GESAMP on the G9 approval, basic and final approval. It's not regulated in the convention. I think it's very challenging for the ship owner, because that means the regulation applying is the regulation from each individual countries. And that's impossible to read for a ship owner. So I do believe IMO will have to set a limit and say, this is a limit, this is how we measure it, so that this is implemented, this is implemented globally, the same rule for everyone, for every ship. I think this is important. I really think it's a matter of interface here, more than the sensors have still to be improved. They have to be calibrated. There must be some level of, I would say, sensor calibration verification, at least on a regular basis. But I do believe that it will be important in order to protect ship owners' operation to have a rule, a regulation that align with G9. So that we can verify, and that ship owners will not be penalized for discharging water with some TRO if it's within the rule agreed with in IMO. So if that answers your questions.
Okay, thank you very much for your sharing your perspective and experience. Thank you, Dr. Guillaume. And may I have another question to the other presenter, Dr. Shin?
Okay, one more.
One more, just one more. Okay.
Just one more.
It is very hard to choose who is gonna go to my question. Yeah. Actually, I have a question to Mr. Opedar, but my question is a little bit overlapping with Mr. Gan. So, yeah, if you allow me, I would not ask to Mr. Opedar. But thank you for your nice presentation. I think it would be helpful for understanding where ships biopowering management will be going to. Yeah, and I have a question to Professor Choi. Thank you for your introduction of various scientific research results from various aspects. I think you I think you did well summarize the effects and expected risk from biofouling management as well as the in-water cleaning technologies. We cannot fully prevent attached organisms on surface of ships. There are even a lot of anti-fouling system has been developed, and these technologies are still improving. As presentation of the Professor Choi, in order to manage biofouling environment friendly, I can agree with in-water cleaning and proactive cleaning shall have capture technology with high performance. In addition, in-water cleaning technology also has the post-treatment technology to separate debris and harmful chemicals in anti-fouling system. It should be better. The problem is, I think, we do not have a standardized procedure to evaluate and verify capturing rate of in-water cleaning. As I know, some of scientists are studying and developing protocol for testing of in-water cleaning performance and or capturing rate of in-water cleaning technology. Professor Choi, can I ask you briefly introduce the studies to evaluate or verify performance of removing and capturing of in-water cleaning technologies, if you are aware? And the other question, I have one more question. Sorry, Professor Choi. You focused on the importance of the cleaning of biofouling as well as anti-fouling to biofouling management. I am wondering what the best practice is for biofouling management in your perspective, because during the correspondence group, we barely gathered the best practice from the member countries. So if you have for example, for best practice, could you introduce to us?
Well, I think it's it's unfair to ask me difficult questions.
Sorry, sir.
And I think it's often from Norway might be a better person to ask such cases. But from my perspective, I just quickly answers the.
Yeah.
I mean, in order technology, I think it's pretty new area. I mean, capturing organisms and not only organisms, what kind of chemicals are being released and captured, what size should be captured, and what size should be can be allowed to be released to the environment. So it's a whole issue, and the Tambour's research is the only thing actually looking through the chemical, heavy metals, in the effluent, and what they found is basically is over their U.S. legal limit in the effluent. So, and it all depends on what kind of technology they are using, right? Yeah, obviously brushing could be generate more particles to the environment and more effluent, and it might be difficult to capture them. So, and I don't know what kind of technology is being developed or has been developed in Korea, but I recommend not go for brushing type problems, and I pray for UV technology, or the laser, which has been on the market for many years for surface cleaning, right? In the industry, and also what's the best practice? I don't know. I mean, but if you look at the data. I mean, the vessels, the longest the vessels stay, the discharge, the release will be, the risk associated with the release, will be higher. And as you can see in my data, the long stay vessels are probably at least 50% of the vessels that stay in Korea, for example, in Busan port. So if I were a regulatory body, I would go for those long stay vessels, more than short stay vessels, and then see what they look like in terms of the organisms, how much organisms are attached to, and we need to look at the entire process, how they attach to, in the beginning, and how they are being transported, and how they are released for those long stay vessels, and what kind of organisms are. So we need to put more research on those issues. How they are attached and transported and being released, especially for those high risk vessels.
Thank you. Thank
And
you,
I
Professor.
think after my add to my comment.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank
I-
you. Thank you too. Yes.
I can just add a couple of comments. Now, I think what we will see in the biofouling management system is the same as we have seen in ballast water management system, that we need to have good criteria, performance criteria, and we need to have good testing of equipment. So in the biofouling, to identify properly the collection of the fouling material for the in-water cleaning with really one of the most challenging system, and how also to test that equipment. We are currently discussing it in the correspondence group. And we are not finalized yet, but I think this will be we will manage to resolve it as we have done for the ballast water management treatment system. We will also do it for biofouling, but quite much work is remaining.
Just to add one comment
Okay.
to this issue. Actually, as you know, the Korea some research teams, especially our researchers that working at this CRISO, are now participating in some R&D project to develop some advanced ROV, the collecting the system robot, or how to treat that the waste made during this the cleanup process, especially technically. So I guess we are start this project from this year to will end for next within the 5 years. We will deliver some result to the global discussion group, especially for better the making more framework, especially considering our result. Anyway, we will contact with you again. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all. Next is my turn. I would like to ask Mr. Ofstedal. Thank you for nice presentation. Biofouling guidelines are being revised by IMO. Also, IMO seems to be supporting biofouling guidelines through the Global Fouling Partnership Project. As you know, the Global Last Partnership Project before the Global Fouling Project supported the adoption and entry into force of the Ballast Water Management Convention. The application of biofouling guidelines is not yet mandatory. As you know, some countries already control and manage the ship's biofouling entering port under their own laws. We believe that frequent removal of biofouling from port and marinas for ship management is accelerating the transportation of aquatic species and deterioration of the marine environment. I think that the adoption of the biofouling guideline alone for the marine environment protection is very insufficient. I would like to hear your opinion on whether we can move forward with the biofouling management convention similar to that ballast water management convention.
Thank you very much for that question and answer. I think it's a good observation. What we are doing on biofouling, I think, is following the same track as we did for ballast water management. When it comes to ballast water management, we had first guidelines in some generations, and then also we had support of developing countries through the Globe Ballast project, and now we are doing the same on biofouling. We are revising the guidelines. We have the Globe fouling project, and 12 developing countries is now extensively looking into how they can improve their actions to prevent the introduction of marine invasive species through the fouling of ships. So this is also about awareness, getting support for the issue, and I would say that this is, it's following the same track. Now, the comments in the correspondence group and also in the wider community is more and more actually say that we need to have better uptake of the guidelines, and more pointing towards we need mandatory requirements. So we will see what will happen in the future, but we are clearly having much larger attention to the issue, and I think also we have now much better say technologies being developed for the treatment of biofouling, and I'm optimistic on the future, actually.
Thank you. Thank you to all for question and answer. Next, I will wrap up this session quickly. Reducing the transportation of aquatic species through ships is very important for the protection of marine environment. As you all know, many aquatic species are moved through ballast water and hull fouling of ships, and many cases of damage to the marine environment have been reported. Fortunately, the Ballast Water Management Convention has come into force, and if this convention is well implemented and complied with, the transportation of aquatic species through ballast water is expected to be controlled and reduced. However, the movement of aquatic species through hull fouling is not yet controlled and managed. Guidelines for the control and management of ships biofouling have been adopted and are being revised. Most of today's attendees are working on revise these guidelines. There were 3 presentations today, we had a Q&A time for them. The first presentation was about a commissioning test, which will become mandatory from June 2022. Sampling and indicative analysis techniques for commissioning tests will continue to be developed, and the test result must be reliable. 2 presentations are on control and management of ships biofouling. It was about the invasion process of organisms through hull fouling, and the introduction of a guideline and the activities of the IMO Global Fouling project. The discussion of the control and management of ships biofouling at IMO is considered to be in the preparatory stage, I think. In-water cleaning techniques of hull fouling seems to be developing rapidly. Advances in this technology will help the guideline discussion, while the IMO is reviewing and discussing the guidelines. Each country will need to control and manage it for ships biofouling. If not, the movement of aquatic species through hull fouling will continue, and the damage to the marine environment will occur. Thanks. Lastly, I closing comments. Convenience of our life has been accompanied by the development of technology. However, our lives require human effort to protect and preserve nature. Reducing the transportation of aquatic species through ships is also part of our effort to protect and preserve the marine environment. I hope that this forum will be on to raise interest in marine environmental protection for many people. Thank you very much for the serious discussion between the presenters and the panels. Also, I would like to thank the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries for organizing this event when it is difficult to meet due to COVID-19 these days. Thank you also to forum officials. This closed the expert discussion session. I hope everyone is healthy and well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
Bye.
Thank you, Guillaume. Thank you, Spain.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank you.
you, Dr. Sung-gil. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.